back with the Coach Spotlight with the Paracycling Next Gen West Coach of Cycling Canada, Phil Abbott. Phil Abbott joined Cycling Canada in 2017. He now oversees their Next Gen program in the Western Canada, based out of Calgary. Hello, Phil. How are you?
Excellent. Doing
Good.
well.
Good.
Thank you.
So you have an outstanding background in cycling, of course, but just to start off, what sparked you to get involved in para coaching with para athletes?
So I was working as a junior coach in Calgary, and I was working at a national training center here, and I was working with another para coach named Stephen Burke, and he was coaching a bunch of athletes. And there was one athlete that he asked if I'd be interested in taking on their program. That person was Mike Samantz. He was a very young 14-year-old kid, and lots of energy and lots of potential. And I started working with him, and that kind of started everything. It kind of snowballed from there. Took on more and more para athletes as time went on. And Mike became a Paralympian and a medalist as well. So.
That's awesome. And when you first started with Mike, is there anything that surprised you or something unexpected that was a difference between able-bodied cycling and paracycling?
If anything, what surprised me is that the lack of difference, that Mike was just another athlete, that I could do exactly what I was doing with other junior athletes and had the same goals and aspirations and wanted to reach the best that he could. So. Pretty similar. That's what surprised me.
That's great to hear. So you with your colleague Guillaume Plourde, the Next Gen East coach, won 13 medals. Your athletes won 13 medals at the Lima 2019 Games. This is incredible. So tell us a little bit how the program is going this year in 2020, of course, but also leading up to the Paralympics in 2021 in Tokyo.
Yeah, so obviously with recent events, we've had to reevaluate how we're doing things. I've chosen and I think the other coaching staff as well have chosen to see it as an opportunity. I think a lot of times we're so focused on racing and prepping for racing, we don't really have big, long, solid blocks to focus on things like volume training. And so just tried to see it as an opportunity to switch gears and focus on the training component. A little bit more freedom than we usually have. And then moving towards the games themselves, starting to look at how we can manage to provide training opportunities in the next couple of months for athletes with a lot of travel restrictions. Typically in a typical season, we'll be looking at going to warm weather camps. Obviously we've made the decision to try to avoid air travel. Just because we think it's too high risk. So looking at domestic opportunities, whether that's doing some camps at some of our domestic indoor velodromes, having athletes drive there, and even looking at going to places like Victoria and trying to do some volume training in the rain. So yeah, trying to find opportunities.
It's never easy, that's for sure. Let's come back with the talk about the athlete recruitment. You're in that zone in the next gen development. What do you find are the challenges in recruiting paracyclists?
Well, I have to say this summer has really surprised us in the number of people that have reached out and contacted us, more than normal, which is not what I would expect. But as a result, the big challenge has been how do we provide basic information and then basic resources to those athletes. We run a decentralized program, but it's really challenging when we have athletes that come forward in, say, areas where we don't naturally have resources, whether that's coaching staff that are familiar with working with para-athletes, provincial sports organizations might not be available, and even equipment. Cycling is a very equipment intensive sport. We do have some equipment, but that's the other big challenge to getting new athletes into the program. But it's been promising the last couple of weeks, so last couple of months as well.
let's say not COVID year, or let's say not
Yeah.
a year that is typical, what would you what are your strategies to try to attract those new athletes to cycling, paracycling? I want to hear a little bit about the swimmers, because I was a swimmer myself
Yeah.
for many years, and I see so many swimmers going to paracycling after they're done competing in the pool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's that element of talent transfer. There's an alpine skier as well. Athletes that have reached success in another para sport and say, you know, I think I've taken swimming, or I've taken alpine skiing as far as I want to or can, but I'm not done with sport. And they seem to gravitate that cycling's a good option for them to try out and see what they can do in cycling. So
Interesting.
yeah, and they come with what's really nice is they come with obviously a big athletic background. So in a lot of cases, it's really easy because they're so fit and they're athletes to start with. It's just about fine tuning some of the cycling components. So
I had to witness my first Velodrome experience at the Milton World Championship back in January, February of this year, and I want to hear you talk about the difference between the Velodrome and the track, the road. Oh, the track is the Velodrome, and the road. What do you tell for the riders when they get on the Velodrome for the first time?
Don't go too slow. The big thing with the Velodrome is that, most velodromes in Canada, there is a minimum speed. If you don't maintain at least around 28, 29 kilometers an hour, you will slide off the banking. So the first thing we tell athletes is maintain a good speed. We're just all about making sure that you don't fall off the track to start with. After that, then we get into the more specific stuff. So
that is cool. Well, and one day I need to try, or like a tandem. That must be so neat.
they'll take all the steering out of it for you. You just got to push.
Do you think there's a challenge for those tandem riders with the pilot and the guide and the athletes in the back? Is there any difference in the way they train and the way they prepare?
Yeah, there is. The bike's obviously a lot longer, a lot slower to move. So typically it can be a real struggle near the end of a pursuit, for instance, to maintain the black line, the shortest distance around the track. And when you have a big, long bike with a lot of weight, it can be really difficult to try to time that and get that bike around those corners effectively, because it is a big, heavy machine. Starts can also be really hard to coordinate, especially with a visually impaired athlete, right? They don't have the visual cues. So trying to make sure that the athletes are riding as in tandem, as we would say.
Mm-hmm. Let's come back a little bit just before we end up with the year, this very challenging year that we're facing. Of course, it has impact competition, a little bit of training, but do you feel that the training has been quite good in the sense of most of your athletes can still train outdoor?
Yeah. The summer, I mean, fortunately it happened like the beginning started in the summer, the beginning of the summer. So like I was saying, we were able to focus on getting out and spending a lot of time just doing volume training, which we don't normally get to do. So we're fortunate that the athletes don't require a facility. It's really nice that we're not swimmers, for example, where if you lose access to the facility, you lose everything. Whereas cycling, there's nothing stopping athletes from walking out their front door, getting on their bike and doing some really good quality training. So we're very fortunate in that sense.
And tell us what would be the major adjustment that you and your team will have to do in 2021 to prepare the best they can for Tokyo?
One of the big tough ones is we often use racing as validation for how we're doing training wise. And we're looking at next year will be 12 to 18 months where we haven't really had a good check-in to see where athletes are at and where the competition is at too. That's really, we're doing some gold medal profiles and trying to figure out gap analysis. And it's really difficult when you're going off data that's over a year old. And so that's going to be challenging moving forward to figure out where we have to be and where we are right now.
I hear you. No, it's definitely a challenge, but I feel that you guys are well equipped to do quite well. Two last questions, or those, let's say, fun questions. What is your favorite or proudest coaching moment so far?
I think para-wise is definitely Mike Samantz winning a bronze medal at the Paralympic Games in Rio. That was definitely one of the proudest moments. And I think anytime an athlete surprises themselves with how well they did, you know, whether that's finishing 8th or 1st or finishing the race, when they have that look on their face like, wow, I didn't think I have that in me. That has to be, I think, some of the best moments.
I agree. It's funny because medals are fun, but every individual have their own stories, and when you see that smile, it shows everything. It tells everything, right? It's very special. Okay, and the last question for you, Phil. What advice would you give to a new coach trying to get involved in para cycling, in para sport?
Don't be afraid and don't worry about it. They're just normal athletes. And I think the more you work with them, the more you realize that.
Well said, Phil. Well, thank you so much for your time. On behalf of the Canadian Paralympic Committee, we wish you all the best to yourself and, of course, your athletes for the next Paralympic Games in the following years. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Talk to you later.